think I'm probably in frame. I can't see it. It's like way too far away.
Yeah.
I'll make you louder. You know, you
Is
get used to
the
living
audio all right? Is it?
on mute, right?
Yeah. Well, I had my wife in here looking at it. She's way more familiar with this type of stuff than I am. So. Yeah, she's my IT specialist.
Oh yeah, that's not your role?
No. I figure out what I need to know in order to accomplish what I need to accomplish, and then it stops there.
All right, so what do you need to accomplish, man?
Just I mean, over the last few years, of course, it was putting out books, and I had a little home recording studio set up for a while, and so it was working on songs and stuff like that. So whatever I'm into at the moment.
Were you mostly your own stuff, or were you producing other people's stuff? What were you doing with a studio?
I did a tiny bit of recording other people. What it actually was so I got divorced from my first wife back in 2010. And so it was, I'm free to do whatever I want to do. So I'm turning my house into a recording studio. And so, yeah, it was a pretty cool little setup.
Well, that's a pretty cool thing to do with a divorce. I mean, like, I totally get that sentiment. There's a musician, I can't remember his actual name, but his band name was Vast, and he had a song called "You Can't Tell Me What to Do Anymore." And I had no idea what the lyrics are, but like just hearing like that much, I'm like, oh, this is a song about that freedom you feel when you break up, and you channeled it somewhere cool, and I just started smoking again. It's just like, well, that's not better. That was a good thing she brought into your life, idiot.
Yeah, that's very much what the situation was. And honestly, like, she had handled all of our finances, throughout my entire 20s. We were together. She handled all the finances. I was essentially a 30-year-old being turned loose on the world with the financial mindset of a 19-year-old. And
God.
Yeah, it was it was the best of times and the worst of times. So. But it was a cool setup. I miss having it sometimes. One of these days, when the kids are grown, probably I'm going to set up another studio.
Yeah, I think you should. What are you doing now creatively? I mean, are you writing? Are you recording? Are you making movies? Are you doing albums?
Man, I'm in a weird place right now, honestly. It's kind of like I went so hard with the writing thing for, let's see, I put out my first book in 2012, and I mean, for years, I went pretty hard with trying to get out there and do book signings and just do all that stuff, and do some speaking engagements. I was also playing with a band at the time. I wound up quitting the band because it just got to be too much, especially with raising kids. And even though, well, most of our shows were local, so it wasn't too bad, and the kids liked to go when it was something that they could go to. But we got into the casino circuit, and in Texas, there's no casinos in Texas. You have to go to Arkansas or Louisiana. And so it just got to be, once we started doing that, it was like 2-3 hour drive just to get to the show. And so I quit not long after that. It was really cool. It was cool to get into that and kind of have that experience. But yeah, as far as what I'm doing now, I'm really, I don't know, I sort of feel like I'm floundering a little bit, really. I have these goals that I want to accomplish. The first is me and my 15-year-old started writing this book. You may have seen me post about it. I don't know. We started that. We actually intended to have it released last year, and just, you know how it is when you're writing, like you get stuck and then you have to kind of give it some space to breathe and, attack it from a different angle and all that. And so it didn't get published last year. We stepped away from it. We came back to it. And so I really wanted to have that done by this April, and it's not going to happen. So at least not by April. So But
Yeah,
yeah,
deadlines are weird, right, man? I mean, on at times in my life, I'm not really going to do anything unless I have a deadline.
hmm
And then in other times, it's like, oh, I actually can't do it because of the deadline, only because of the deadline. It is like the sole reason why I'm like, I dread this thing and I can't get anything out of it.
yeah, yeah.
I can seem to control that part of me. There's like a really obstinate soul in there that when it just doesn't want to budge, it's like, no, no, fuck that deadline. That's a terrible thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I can totally relate to that. I was doing, so we had gotten to a point where I was working on rewrites by myself, going through stuff and rewriting. Um, Man, I've gotten to this place where I hate writing at home. I just feel like I just procrastinate when I'm at home. And so this actually started a couple of years ago. I was ghostwriting a book, and I found the only way that I could really focus on it was to go to McDonald's way early in the morning and just get a coffee, sit in the back corner and write. And so I started, um, here our COVID restrictions are hit and miss. They're open, they close again, and open, they close again. So I had, back in October, I had gotten in a good spot with this McDonald's that I was going to, writing, like going to work out way early in the morning, and then going to write for a couple of hours. And I really felt like I was getting somewhere with it. And then COVID cases started to increase, so they shut down the lobby, and it was like it just fell apart after that. I haven't been able to get that momentum going again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But
I've been there when the COVID restrictions took away my little coffee shop.
hmm
I was like really hooked on it. Like it
yeah,
was maybe only 2 hours of writing, maybe only an
hmm
hour and a half, but it was the most productive writing.
yeah,
And nobody wanted to talk to me. And
that's the
on the
best. That's the
outside,
best.
they had a chair and a table, and I could sit there and write. But yeah, it's taken a long time for me to be able to write at home.
Yeah,
And this is like even back in like 97, 98, 99. I still like I was someone that sat at Denny's or IHOP or Waffle House, like whatever, like 24-hour diner, just insomnia, drinking the worst coffee in the world, but like writing constantly, and
yeah,
I've never been able to break that association. I was able to break away from drinking and writing,
hmm
but then I wasn't able to like get away from the like location. Like it's got to feel
yeah,
right. Almost like you might buy. There's like a lot of people who write who will joke about how many notebooks you buy, but I'll be damned if there isn't something about this brand of pen on this paper actually feels like this story, and I can write it.
yeah,
So
yeah,
as a different type of story, I actually need a different pen and a different notebook.
yeah. It really does. I mean, it's something.
Superstition is fucking sports. It's like, if I wear this jersey inside out on this day.
Yeah, it's kind of funny with the writing in public, and you'll see a lot of people that kind of bash that, like, oh, you're so pretentious, you just want to be seen as a writer. But it really it narrows your focus, because it's like when you go there, you feel like, okay, I came here to get a certain thing done, and I only
Mhm.
have an hour or 2 hours to get it done. And so the minute I can sit down at this booth, I'm going to work, and I'm not coming up for air until my time is up and I have to leave. And now, not that, when I was in my teens or 20s, that I didn't write in public a few times to try to impress somebody, but once you grow up and get past all that, it's like, this is really helping me. Like, this is, and
Mhm.
but yeah, I feel I feel the obligation of the house, and it's not even that anybody, me and my wife. I mean, our housework is divided pretty equally, so it's not even that she's like putting pressure on me. You need to do this or that, or even the kids, because we're a blended family, so they're not all here all the time. She has two, I have two, Some days we have one set, some days we have all four of them, some days we don't have any of them. And so it's not even that. It's just I sit down and I try to focus and I think, oh, you know, the hinges on that door need to be oiled, or, you know, there's something that I forgot to do last week that I've been meaning to do, and I should probably do that first. And it just becomes this never ending, just a bunch of excuses really to keep from having to, I guess, get in there and do the hard work, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what the Buddhists call the monkey mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it just swings branch to branch to branch. Whatever, if you're trying to meditate, it doesn't really matter if you're trying to get in the zone.
Yeah.
The monkey mind will be like, well, what about that over there? What about that over there? Let's get going. There's something over here. Yeah, I think what you said before about the ritual, getting up, going to McDonald's like you're going to work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, rituals are really powerful for me too. And I don't know, it sounded like you had like a really rational reason for it. But for me, it's much more like primal and underneath the covers. Like, I need, back when I had hair, it'd be like, I need a haircut. I need a change in my life. And like that physical external act would let me feel different enough, sometimes self-destructive too, but like sometimes positive. But to do something physical would like give me that little bit of like energy change. Like now I can snap into that. And going to work ritual is definitely a big one. When I work from home, I just get fat and stop like taking care of myself and forget how to talk to people, and I hate it, you know. Left to my own, I'm a mess. Like oh, what am I gonna have for lunch? I don't know what this. How many packages of hot dogs are in a serving?
I can definitely relate to that. I think that the last probably 7 or 8 years have been a series of me finding ways to trick myself into doing what I know that I need to do in the first place. You know, the getting up early started with putting my phone as far across the room as I could, so I would have to get out of bed to turn the alarm off. And you know, that's another thing. And I was going to the gym religiously before COVID shut it down yet again. And then even then, I was still doing good about working out at home. And then with the ice storm and everything that we had last month here, it just all fell apart. And I used it as an excuse because we were eating really clean too, really healthy. And I just used it as a total excuse to, well, I'm just going to eat whatever I want till we're through this, you know? And so now it's like trying to pull all that back. It's like, okay, well, we've been through it like 3 weeks now and you're still eating cheeseburgers every single day. So
now, how messed up was that? I mean, I saw your posts.
Oh, it was
water in the ice in the bathtub, just survivalism, hillbilly logic. Like, what was going? Like, shit.
Yeah, man, it was crazy because we get snow. Mostly, actually, we don't usually get snow. We'll get a little bit of sleet, maybe once or twice a year, and some years not at all. And so it's not something that we're real familiar with. I will say that we were incredibly lucky where we're at. Our power only went off for a little bit, so we at least had heat throughout the majority of the thing. I did wind up going to get my grandparents and my aunt because they live a little bit closer to Dallas, and they had no heat. My grandfather was really resistant. He didn't want to leave the house, and it's like, you guys have been without power for 2 days now. It's, you know, even with the little fireplace going, it's like 50 something degrees in here. So, you know, but yeah, it was so I used to be kind of a low key prepper. And so some of that kicked in.
Was it satisfying in that sort of way? I mean, once you knew that you were going to be all right?
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. It was, you know, like, okay, you know, I'm not the crazy guy who has a little bit of food stockpiled.
Well, you know, I joke about like hillbilly ingenuity, but like I got a lot of family in and around Jackson, Mississippi. And when the FEMA checks came for Katrina, like, I mean, the damage that happened to people's homes was real.
Yeah.
But they had already fixed it themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Without a permit, just they fixed it. Like I think my uncle turned one tree into a piece of cabinetry. Like there's people like they just do stuff, and so
Yeah.
there are people who are not prepared, and then there's like environmental stuff that can be beyond anyone's ability to prepare. Like it
Yeah.
doesn't scale well, but for a lot of folks, certain situations aren't too far from just normal.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
life in a trailer is always full of risk, guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know, but I'm glad
Yeah.
you're right.
Yeah. Yeah. My wife is awesome. I mean, the minute that the water went out, I mean, we were right off the bat, we're like, okay, we're filling up the bathtubs, we're boiling however
Mm-hmm.
much. We had some bottled water, but knowing how much water it takes to keep everybody taken care of, we were like, okay, we got to get on top of this right now. And
Mm-hmm.
so, I mean, she was just, going out, trucking in snow, boiling it on the stove, and even taking time to lay down, make a snow angel, So she was,
Right.
she's just awesome in that way. But yeah, I feel like, so I was kind of raised, my mom was 21 when I was born, and then her mom died the following year. And so she, I never really realized this until I was an adult, but I'm like, man, she was like, severely lost when I was, early childhood. And so she really kind of raised me and my sister with this, you need to know how to take care of yourself. I'm not going to be here forever,
Right.
And so it's like we just kind of were raised with that attitude of nobody's coming to save you. There's no cavalry. You better know how to take care of yourself. And, it can sound a little bit harsh, but at the same time, I mean, it's a brutal world. You never know what's going to happen. And so, there was some of that. There was some of the, being in the juvenile justice system and some of the habits that you pick up just in, that kind of situation where it's like, okay, what skills do I have that I can leverage to make sure that I'm all right in this situation?
Well, sure. I mean, PTSD is not an illness, it's a survival mechanism
Mm-hmm.
that if you didn't have it during your traumatic situations, you wouldn't have been able to survive it. You wouldn't have been able to face it and get to the next day. It would have been so horrible to do these things, and a lot of people do it. But it is like a true superpower. It just stays on when you don't need it, and that's when it becomes like extremely exhausting and everything else. But what you describe, I mean, yeah, when I'm in a crisis, like a legit crisis, it's like, I got this. Fuck you. It's fine.
Yeah.
When everything is cool and everyone's opening presents at Christmas and smiling and laughing and hugging each other, I'm crawling out of my skin. Just like, when's it gonna go up in flames? Like, when will someone, a family member, come in drunk with a knife and, but like that doesn't happen in my life. That doesn't happen in my in-laws' lives, but like I am like just ready. And when it does happen, I'm like strangely satisfied. And
yeah, like, okay, I understand this. I understand this. Like, I can do this.
Right.
The rest of that stuff, that's the hard stuff.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, that's all through my 20s. And that's kind of, so before I was released from the juvenile justice, this is back, I went in like 96, got out, or actually it started the end of 95. And so I got out almost exactly 2 years later in 97. And at that time I was diagnosed with PTSD, but like nobody had heard that at that time. Like like they told me, it's post-traumatic stress disorder. And I'm like, okay. And then that was it. Like nobody said anything else about it. They didn't tell me what the symptoms are. And so all through my 20s, man, I just thought I was screwed up. Like, I just thought, like, what is wrong with me? I'm just a screwed up individual, and I keep sabotaging myself, and I keep, freaking out over nothing at all. And I mean, it wasn't until, I guess, veterans started coming back from Iraq that it became, the buzzword, and people started to understand what it was. And then I'm like, oh, hey, that's what they told me I had, And so, yeah, it was, but yeah, I mean, it's funny, the things that, the ways that it'll mess with you psychologically that you don't even recognize. You don't even know why.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Perfectly rational to you.
Mm-hmm.
You don't even see it. Yeah.
Yeah. I used to have this fantasy of whenever things would get, especially in my first marriage, when things would get really bad, I had this fantasy of, I'm just going to go get an acre somewhere, a couple of acres, and I'm going to build this little cinder block house. And it's going to be minimalistic. It's only going to have a place to sleep and a bathroom and this and that. And dude, I fantasized about this for years before I realized that was the first cell that I was locked in. What I was picturing was, like for years, this was what I wanted to do to escape, like what I was in, because that, when I first went in, they didn't call it solitary, but it was an understaffed, small town, small county juvie jail. And so it was essentially solitary for 3 months. I was in there, maybe got to come out once a week to shower or whatever. And so yeah, but it's like, I didn't even recognize how much that affected me, and that.
Oh yeah. That image like buried itself, just impregnated deep in your psyche. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whoa.
And then it's like, sometimes you wonder too, you're like, okay, this thing here, how much of that is me and how much of that is a result of those experiences? Because I kind of don't know, just certain things that you go through, you're like, would I be like this anyways? Or is this a direct result of that?
I totally think about that all the time. Like, I went through this kind of grieving for whoever I thought I would have been.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have, flunked out of school. I wouldn't have done this, whatever. But like, I had to like grieve and like let that person go and just say, okay, I got what I am now, and I can take any kind of assessment and see like, where do people with similar scores have chronic health problems?
Yeah.
Like you have a 70% higher chance of being an addict. You have a 90% chance higher of heart disease, and like the list goes on of what sort of things are very common. But like, take it in, then kind of put it away, because I can only be present now, and I don't know, but I've thought about that a lot. Like,
yeah,
I was really resistant to the notion of therapy, because I didn't want stuff I like about myself to be pathologized. I don't want it to be described this as a symptom. Like, I like that part. I don't want to change that. But it turned out that that's not at all what they were going to do. So maybe some therapists would have, but like, I just had a lot of fear, didn't go to doctors as a kid, my family just was too poor and too rebellious, and just like, I didn't know how to carry myself. So I always thought every situation with a medical professional was going to be hostile. Yeah. And they're going to treat me with contempt. So I better go in there like pissed. I don't say anything.
Yeah.
What's wrong with you? Nothing.
I think it's hard. Getting any kind of treatment requires a certain amount of surrender, and especially when you've been through some stuff where you develop that survival mentality. You build up your walls, you build up your barriers, you learn how to keep yourself safe, not just physically but emotionally.
Oh, but sure, man.
Yeah, it's like
got a dog with a bad gouge on its leg, and you're like trying to like let me clean it, and they're like, no, I don't want to show you that.
Yeah.
Until you reach that surrender point, and then they say, fine, kill me or heal me, I don't care.
Yeah, it's like anything, whatever's next is better than what's going on now. So right. Yeah. I know for me it was my wife and kids, because That's one of my biggest regrets is when my kids were small, I was so short-tempered, and no, they don't remember it. I think that I remember, because it's not like I yelled and screamed at them all the time, but like the instances where I just totally lost it, like, man, that stuff hurts to think about. And they're like, it's fine, I don't even remember that. And I'm like,
it was probably a lot bigger, more magnified for you, for your experiences, and yeah, I get that.
Yeah. But yeah, it's like you get to that point where it's just like, okay, I got to do something. Actually, the thing, it's kind of crazy the way things turned out, because the thing that helped me the most was I was hired to ghostwrite a book for a guy, and it was like a self-help slash memoir kind of book. And just, he had similar experiences. Some really bad stuff happened to him when he was little. And, he just kind of, he built this business, became pretty wealthy, and then totally lost it all when he was about 37 because of just all of his mental stuff going on. And just some of the techniques that I learned. One of the funniest ones is he would tell me about how he would listen to this was back in the 80s, so it was cassette tapes, but like almost like self-help gurus or positivity affirmations, stuff like that. And so he was telling me this about how he would take a tape and he would listen to it 30 or 40 times before he would move to the next tape. And so at the beginning, I'm like, just, okay, yeah, I'm kind of cynical about the whole deal, but he's paying me to write this book, so okay. But I'm thinking to myself, okay, this guy brainwashed himself, big deal. And then it's like later on, as I got to understand more of his journey, I was like, holy shit, he brainwashed himself and it worked. And and so like I did, like I started anything positive or anything affirming or anything, even just spiritual. The Tao Te Ching is one that I have listened to multiple times, that, just get certain audiobooks and listen to over and over and over again. And it does kind of help me align and help me find it helps me walk a certain path. And whenever I get too far away from that path, it kind of, you can feel it, like you can kind of feel it start to unravel at the seams a little bit. And you're like, okay. Yeah. It's like, I need to realign myself.
Well, I think of it as like, reprogramming or replowing your trail or your field. Like, I saw this thing. I was talking about some meditation techniques, and they were talking about how even on a cloudy day, overcast day, the blue sky is still up there. Doesn't matter when stuff comes in the way, the sky is still there. And that when you can see a peak of it, the more times you can peek the sky through the clouds, the easier it is to find the sky again. And eventually, the more often you're there, you can spend your time there. And I don't know. I think about my mental pathways so literally as like a farm road where you didn't drive through it very often, so weeds grew up around it, and it got really hard to travel through. And so if you have out-of-town family, and they say, "Okay, we're gonna drive out to the ridge," it's like, not in that rental, like that's not gonna happen. Like we gotta take the truck, or a couple trucks, because there's a lot of it, because the ridge is overgrown now. But if it's a road that's traveled often, it's smooth. There's nothing in the way. Nothing's overgrown. You can keep going up to the ridge anytime you want. Visit the old Hunt Cemetery or whatever is up there. But everybody's got one, right?
Yeah.
The Wolf Family Cemetery. Well, it's past I
mean, it really is. It's true.
But people can harm themselves with it. Like, if you spend too much time, like, not to say wallowing, but like if you spend time in negative mental pathways, negative meaning, not negative meaning violent, but like negative to like your own well-being, however you define that. Because I'm a broody motherfucker, and one of my things I love to do is feel sad. And feeling sad is actually good for me. Doesn't bother me at all. I missed breakups. I mean, I'm married for a long time. I'm not going to get a divorce.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend
Envy,
divorce.
but I fucking loved breakups. And anyway, however you define a negative mental pathway, whatever's destructive to you, if you stay in that, it does get worse. Not
Mhm.
that positive thinking cures anything,
Yeah.
but it sure as shit makes a lot of this stuff within the margins. Maybe you're going to tilt one way, tilt the other way. It's enough of a push to go one place or the other.
Yeah.
For a lot of people, maybe not everybody, but certainly true for me.
Yeah. Well,
And
that's like,
that little push can be so right, just so right.
yeah, that's well, one of the hard things too, and I experienced this with this guy when he was telling me certain things, trying to show me certain ways that I could be better than what I was.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when you're in it, it pisses you off whenever
Mm-hmm.
somebody tells you, like, hey, you don't have to suffer nearly as much as you are because you can do this, this, and this, and that's going to help you feel better. Man, when you're in the middle of it, you're like, you do not understand how bad I feel inside. Like, you don't understand how close to the edge I am, and it just pisses you right off. But then, I kind of feel like for me, so like we all, we have this notion of happiness, that happiness is this thing to attain. Like you can, climb a couple of mountains and wind up, oh, there's happiness right there at the top of the third mountain. You just grab it and take it home. And to me, it's become more of something like a hologram that emerges um, from all of these other practices that I put into place. Just the diet and exercise are huge for me. Like I can tell, even just missing out for like it's been like at least a full month now. Um, I can tell that I've started to have more depressive thoughts slip in than
Mm-hmm.
what I mean, I went from for the last 3 years. This is like the first time since I was a teenager that I have been unmedicated, like not on any medications for the last 3 years.
Holy.
And, which, I don't know if we need to give a disclaimer that we're not licensed medical professionals. So nobody listening should, just,
No, and if you needed something tomorrow, you'd take it, and there's no shame.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm not
Right, right.
anti medication or anything, but yeah, I was told for a long time, especially in my 20s, like, this is just how you are. There's nothing you can do about it. You're going to be on these pills forever,
Mm-hmm.
and the stuff that I learned, especially working with that guy on his book, has really brought me to a place where, I mean, I genuinely feel happy most of the time. It's like, yeah, I still have a depressive thought here and there, but part of it is being able to identify that when it starts. Whereas before there was no identifying the thought. It was just,
Oh,
here, we're slipping right down the ladder. We're in it now, and however long it lasts. And that's one of the things that he taught me was how to just to take a step, almost like viewing yourself in third person. Like you step outside of yourself and look at yourself. A visualization that helps me is having teenage boys. I look at myself as if I was my own son. Like
yeah, yeah.
I take a mental step back and I look at, like, yeah, Steven's 41, but I'm looking at him as if that's my son. What would I tell him?
Yeah.
What would I try to explain about the situation that he's in that's stressing him out, or this and that?
That's time travel, man. I mean, that is your future self talking back to your present.
Yeah,
That's
it
just
is. I mean, that's what, when you were talking just a little bit ago about potential and grieving,
mm-hmm.
grieving for your younger self and everything. I don't know how much aging plays into that, because you get
Mm-hmm.
to it, when you're young, everything is potential. Like you just have, nothing is really, I mean, like some stuff is set in stone, but far less of you is set in stone than when you get to be 40 or so.
Mm-hmm.
You hit 40 and it's like, okay, I wanted to do this, this, and this, but I didn't. And now the curtain is kind of closing on that.
Oh yeah, and nobody at any job you ever take past 40 says, "Yeah, they've got a lot of potential.
Yeah.
you can either do the job or you fucking can't.
Yeah.
We're done talking about potential. 30s, 20s, so much potential in that young person. They're gonna go so far. You know, I'm gonna hire them based on potential because they're trainable.
Yeah.
Past 40, it's like if you can't do this, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. You have no potential.
I kind of feel that way with like doing videos or doing photography out in public. I feel like when you're young, and especially if you're young and cute, you know, whatever people deem to be cute, you get a huge pass on whatever creative thing you're doing out in public. You know, like, oh, these kids, look at those kids. You know, even if you're kind of getting on somebody's nerves, they're like, these freaking kids, whatever. It's like when you get to be older, you start to get pretty close to maybe you're the creepy old man. I don't know, you know.
No, for sure, for sure. Like 7 or 8 years ago, I don't know, I was like driving through a parking lot and some teenage punks like just kind of jumped in front of the car and like flipped me off and like shouted a bunch of stuff, you know. And I had like this decision tree in my brain. You know, that was like my mid 30s. And I was like, oh, what am I going to do? Do I show them hostility or no, be meek, you know? And I just kind of like, you know, flinched, they cheered and then ran off, you know? And I'm just like, fuck yeah, they stuck it to a square tonight, you know? Like, it doesn't, I lost nothing. But they're gonna go off feeling like this is we really spooked that guy or whatever it is. You know, he was shitting his pants.
Yeah.
And I can feel that way because they were young. But if it was Gigi Allen, you know, if it's like some, you know, 50-year-old, some scary punk jump out and do the same thing, I'd be like, no, I've gotta get out of here, and I'm not gonna humor you and let you. Oh, I'm so scared. Like, no, you're old. You missed your chance to be cute with this stuff.
Yeah. Like if you're still acting like that at that age, then possibly there's, you know, something going on.
You're gonna try to eat me. You're a cannibal. You might be a zombie. I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell apart sometimes.
Well, it's like, you know, when you have kids, you kind of have an excuse to be in the toy aisle. You have an excuse to be at the park. You know, you can just kind of go wherever with your kids and it's all right. But like we have this little park really right around the corner. We live in a very small town. And so right around the corner, there's a little library, there's a little park. And I was walking by there today and I was like, man, it'd be cool if I took one of my typewriters over there and like just started writing at the park. And then I'm like, I don't know, man, if I'm over there, you know, big bearded guy sitting in the park with a typewriter just pounding away with no kids anywhere in sight, you know, I don't know, I may get the cops called on me. I'm not sure. But
keep your pants on.
Yeah, you know, that's at least there's that. But yeah, it's strange, you know, you get to a certain age where it's like, I think that's what kind of like you feel that loss of potential. You feel like, man, I just, you know, I had all this time that I squandered just trying to figure out life, trying to figure out what was wrong with me. And
I think it's impossible that you squandered any time at all in your life, Stephen. Like, honestly, I feel like you've worked through so much, and every step of it, whether you produced something or not, you were working.
Yeah.
So I appreciate I kind of refuse to believe you've ever actually wasted a minute of your time.
Well, you know, okay, so like when you phrase it like that, when I actually sit down and think about it and think about, you know, all the stuff that I've managed to do, even with dealing with the depression and anxiety and everything, I'm like, okay, you know, I'm cool with that. Like I'm, you know, I played in bands, I, you know, put out books. I still was there for my kids and
holy shit. Okay, similar situated person. I would not think less of them for completely going off the rails of their life, you know, and like going to the real dark places and staying there. Like, I would think like, yeah, can't blame you.
Yeah. Man, I really think my kids saved my life, honestly, because I just love, you know, I just love them. more than anything, like ever, like, you know, I mean, I just loved from, you know, from the moment my first one was born, like I've just loved and adored them. And so it's like, you know, I think that was, even though I was too young, I believe, I don't think, you know, I'm trying to think if I was 22, 23 when my first was born. I certainly wasn't mature enough to be a father, but I, you know, I feel like I became mature through being a father. You know, like
you had potential.
Yeah, I had potential. Yeah, but yeah, you know, there were so many days where, I mean, it was really so dark. I lived with suicidal thoughts for a long time, like a good solid decade, almost, I would say 90% of the time. That's how I felt. You know, I didn't like, I really, looking back at how dark it was, I kind of feel like I have no reason to be here except for I wasn't willing to leave my kids without a dad. You know, like I just wasn't going to do that, you know. And so, yeah, you know, maybe I should give myself a little more credit for the stuff that I did accomplish given the situation.
Yeah, I mean, don't go Kanye on us or anything, you know, but like, yeah. Okay, so what? I've known you 2.5 years?
Probably something like that.
You know, we've exchanged stories here and there. I've seen what, you know, you've shared. Like, I think it's evident to me that what you've done is uncommon. It's not mandatory. It's not expected. It's like entirely a voluntary growth situation. You could chalk it up to, well, I love my kids. It's like, yeah, but how many of us are like fifth, sixth generation dad no-shows, right?
Yeah.
They had kids. They loved them.
Yeah.
In some weird way. They weren't there. They couldn't be there. They didn't have it, you know. You had it. You've got it.
Yeah.
So even putting it on your kids, it's still you, man. So whatever.
Yeah. Well,
Stay humble. Hey, hold on.
I won't let it go to my head, but I appreciate
you
that.
You mentioned ghostwriting. Was it one ghostwriting project, or you've done multiple ghostwriting projects?
No, it was just that one. Now, when I first got hired on to do that one, I'm like, okay, this is what I'm gonna do. And then it's like, by the time I was done with that book, I'm like, screw ghostwriting, man. This is frustrating. But
was it just a chance meet? I mean, what?
He was a guy that just knew some people that knew me, that knew I was a writer, and so he just called me up one day, and he's like, you know, how much would you charge to help me ghostwrite this book? And of course, I didn't have any freaking idea, so I kind of looked it up and looked at what the low estimate was, and then I charged even less than that, and then he agreed to it immediately, and then I knew I screwed up because I could have gotten more money than that, because, you know, but it was that lack of confidence. And I told him right off the bat, I'm like, look, I've never ghostwritten anything. Like, I've always, you know, done my own stuff, you know, fiction and poetry, and so this is totally different, but I'm willing to give it a shot. But yeah, it was a good experience. I think that the thing that frustrated me was I'm not a good collaborator, because I generally, once I get going on something, I have such a strong vision of how it should be, and it can't be any other way. And it just, you know, when somebody's paying you to do something, you just have to do it like they want it, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's what frustrated me about it. There's, you know, but I mean, it was a good experience. But the thing that I really got out of it were, I call them my Jedi mind tricks, just all of the little tricks that I use, you know, to kind of keep myself aligned, stay in a positive state of consciousness. You know, I mean, there's a whole handful of them that, you know, of course, if I go to try to list them off now, I'm going to not be able to think of any, but they just pop up from time to time. Gratitude is a huge one. Just being grateful for honestly, like, my gratitude, I look at the whole of human history, like all of human history up until like the last 80 years was absolutely freaking terrible. Like, just completely terrible. Even if you had it good, it was bad. you know, like I look at my grandparents, they didn't even have electricity or running water when they grew up. And so it's like, man, how spoiled am I to be sitting in, you know, a nice comfortable house with running water and electricity, and, you know, we're not hungry, we have all the food that we need. Like, how spoiled do I have to be to sit here and be pissy all day because I'm just in a mood, you know? And not that I still don't sometimes, because sometimes I do. But
well, you can't hold that. You cannot hold that perspective all the time.
Yeah.
And live in the real world. But the fact that you can go back there, you can find that blue sky more often than you used to, means a lot. But like, yeah, I can't either, because you mentioned running water. We talked about, you know, Texas and not having water. I have, for like 20 years, thought, like, and when answered this kind of question while just kind of shooting the shit with friends, like, oh, isn't today's world a marvel? If you could, you know, show your ancestors something, what would it be? 100% of the time, I've never wavered on this, and I don't think I will. Warm, clean, running water.
Yeah.
Going in there, you can just let it stream all over your body, and it just doesn't really end, and you can just, oh, warm water coursing on your genitals. I mean, like, what a fucking time. Holy God, it is so fun. Anybody that's, like, you know, been in a situation where your water is severely rationed or not potable, or whatever the situations were. Like, I had a lot of water that had to be boiled on a stove and put in the family bucket. Like, I basically grew up in like the 50s or 40s or something. West Virginia in the 80s was, you know, just time warped. But
yeah,
that's all I would show my ancestors, like running water. And as long as I could keep thinking about that and like not be caught up on gadgetry or anything, or whatever the kids are recording their TikToks on their $1,000 phone that the parents bought them, you know, like, I don't think about that. Like, I got running water.
Yeah.